certainly disagree with most of this comment from Jim, who says Oklahoma has already changed the landscape of the SEC, making all games relevant rather than a few top games and then cupcakes. Now you get to play every 1 year in and year out, not every 10 years. So, what I'm interpreting there is that there are a lot of people out there that do believe that the SEC is a two-team league, Alabama, Georgia. But I would say if you go to the numbers, take Alabama and Georgia out of the SEC, but also take the top two teams out of every other conference in America. The SEC is still going to be the best conference from three to the bottom of the conference versus all the other conferences. If you look at non conference games against the other Power Four conferences, and you look at bowl games and postseason games, the SEC is still going to be the best conference. So, Texas would not have fared very well in the SEC. Shoot, they barely had a 500 record in conference since they went to the BCS championship game in '09. I ran those numbers, and yeah, they're winning like 53% of their games in the conference. So
Yeah,
they would not have done anything in the SEC.
yeah, no, I'm with you, and I think it's sometimes just some to a certain degree, it's one of those things where sometimes you have to actually go through something to value exactly what it is, and I think and with this, with this comment, and I think there's others that share this sentiment, whether it's Oklahoma fans or whether it's Texas fans or whether it's Big 12, just people in general. Remember the comment that Sonny Dykes had made about with TCU this past year in terms of they don't get to play. He made the comment, we don't get to play an FCS opponent or a lower tier FBS opponent late in the year. Yeah, but you also don't have to run the gamut of the SEC schedule. So I think this is one of those things for some. As I mentioned earlier, I think a lot of people think that Oklahoma and or Texas are going to be able to compete at a very, very high level initially, and they may, they may, but I think both schools to a certain degree, the I, I think just these games each and every week that are way more challenging. And I know Kansas was much improved, but throughout the years you've had a little bit of a doormat in Kansas, or and previously you've had Iowa State, and a lot previously you've had Kansas State that wasn't. So I think throughout the years there's been teams where you could not necessarily be at your best and you can get away with that and win. I mean, in the SEC, I mean, there's really Vanderbilt, and that's about it, right? I mean, there's not teams that are taking last year away. Obviously, there's not a Kansas in the SEC outside of Vanderbilt. So I think when you look at it, when you stack it up, it's not really, no disrespect to the Big 12, but it's not really even close to in my estimation, in terms of exactly what these teams are going to go have to deal with week in and week out, um, as opposed to what they're seeing in the Big 12. So, and I think it's like one of those things that you have to, that some fans and some people that are closely following both of these programs will have to go through to understand. Yeah, it's a lot tougher than maybe I realized.
Yeah, I in no way would want to discredit what TCU accomplished last year, but if you watch them play from week to week against the Texas Techs of the world and Baylor, who turned out to be a 6-7 team that they had to pull out a miracle to win that game, and over and over, it's not hard to see where if you just plucked a mid-tier SEC team like Mississippi State or Ole Miss or Arkansas and had them play TCU in the middle of the season, wouldn't shock me if they would win that game. I'm
Yeah,
not saying that they're better, but that would not be much of an upset.
yeah, completely agree. Completely agree, Mark. And um, yeah, it's just, I mean, and a lot of people have noticed this, but I think the differences are. I mean, for a large majority, I mean, Oklahoma and Texas could probably compete at a skill position perspective with a lot of these, mid tier, what we're calling, exactly your point. Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Arkansas, those are perfect examples. Where the difference is, and I think Texas has seen this a couple of times, and quite frankly, Oklahoma's seen it a couple of times as well in some of these big games that they played um, in the playoffs, where the difference is the offensive and defensive lines, the type of player that the SEC teams are getting compared to the type of player that traditionally that Oklahoma and Texas has been getting is very, very different. So I think I think as you continue to go through this and think through this, that's the thing that Oklahoma and Texas need to be able to get better on, get better in is that recruiting and that development among the offensive and defensive lines, because that to me seems to be the big difference in the two conferences.
And again, Sooner Thrawn, here's the deal. All these games that you're citing are against SEC teams. So when you're talking about Tennessee getting steamrolled by South Carolina, yeah, that's who they get. That's another SEC team. So basically, here's the deal. If you take the SEC 1 through 14 and you match it up, it's proven every year. It's not been proven in any year in the last 15 years that based on out of conference results, both in the playoffs, the bowl games, the non conference games, that the SEC wins more than anybody else, and it's not close. Now you can take a particular bowl season, you can take little slices here and there, but my goodness, that league just this past season beat TCU, Ohio State, Kansas State, Oregon, Utah, Pitt, Clemson, BYU, my goodness, Illinois, Purdue. There is nowhere close to that stack of a lineup of wins by any conference. It's not even close. Just isn't.
Yeah, no, I'm in complete agreement with you.